Hey everyone, I'm really excited to get you today's episode with our guest, Eric Scovill. Eric was absolutely fantastic. Before we get into the episode and how great it was, I want to talk about this episode was recorded prior to launching the Purpose Matrix officially, and we made some changes to make the video quality better. So this was prior, so the video quality on this may not be as good as what you've been used to as of late, but nonetheless, it's a great discussion with Eric. I really enjoyed it. You know, he talks about his really rough upbringing, how hockey kept him somewhat in line, how that was his identity, and then how his identity evolved over time as he learned more about himself. Talks about his career and a major shift from a successful construction career to a move that made no sense at all. And then really we talk about wealth building. So that's what Eric does. Is he's a a financial advisor, if you will, but not a traditional one. And he talks about real investing, not just in the stock market, but real estate, cryptocurrency, and kind of strategy overall and portfolio strategy, and how his company is redefining estate planning and what a financial advisor can and the impact they can have. And then he gives us some parenting guidance. He talks about his family summit that they host, which can be really impactful if we have kids. And he goes through what the role that faith plays and how he runs his business. It's a really intriguing episode. It was a great discussion. I really enjoyed it. I think you will as well. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the show. Very excited for this week's guest, Mr. Eric Scovill. Eric, how are you doing today?
I'm good, brother. Good to be on here.
I am excited about this conversation. We're having a little discussion. I was like, Eric, stop. You got to stop now. I have to hit record. We got to get this to our listeners. So very excited for it. For our listeners, Eric, he was thriving in the construction industry, but felt a clear call from God to step into the unknown world of finance. A lot of just knowledge, wisdom, but you can just tell, like, he coaches his business experience, a deep reliance on his humility and submission. He took the leap. And he provides financial expertise founded in spiritual truth. And really what's cool is Eric has identified the fact that he has a unique opportunity to take what he does as a profession to really have an impact on people, is what I heard in a very short discussion that we had. So his business, Storehouse Wealth, and then also he has his own podcast called Wealth Well Done. So Eric, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about your story, who you are, and how you became who you are.
Okay. Yeah. No, I appreciate you having me on and looking forward to this conversation, Phil. So came from a broken home. And that was key into the development. I had raised in a situation that wasn't ideal by a lot of means, but hockey became what God used to be this strength and discipline, and honestly a parent in my life in a lot of ways. And as I continued to excel in hockey, that kept me from doing all of the really bad stuff that I would have done otherwise. I still did plenty of bad stuff, but I grew up somewhat in the church and would have told you that I was a Christian and would have thought I was a pretty good one, because if I just compared myself to the people next to me, especially when I got into hockey and the toxic environment that was. So I thought I had faith, and I had nothing. I had just this little understanding of some rituals and no relationship, no humility whatsoever, no real accountability, and no depth of even an understanding of what the Christian faith actually was. So that was going on all through my adolescence and into college. After college, God used something that was at the time the worst thing that had ever happened to me, and it turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me, and knocked me off my rails and started me on a discipleship journey. And so with that, then I got into construction. Absolutely loved the field, loved the career. I loved real estate. I loved managing people. I loved seeing tangible results from projects. And then when they asked me to look at taking a big advance in that company, then I felt like I wasn't supposed to take it. It made no sense whatsoever. On paper, this was everything you could ever ask for. And I just couldn't shake this feeling that I was supposed to go somewhere different. I was still pretty new in my spiritual walk, and definitely new to hearing from the Lord. But we, through a series of events, kind of decided to take the leap of faith, and it turned out to be into finance, which I wanted nothing to do with. Absolutely nothing. I used to walk into friends' offices who worked at financial advisor firms and thought that looked terrible. And so I very reluctantly agreed to step forward into where God was leading. And it's been an incredible journey ever since.
What were the items that pulled you in that direction? You said just, you didn't anticipate or picture yourself as a finance person. I'll just say you were loving construction and real estate, but I think the next role, was it like the long-term thinking where you going? Was it like just here and
No,
now, this feels right? Yeah. Tell me more
no.
about
So,
that.
so I decided that on my deathbed, I will not care about what position I held. And so they were asking me to they didn't say, hey, we want you to take over CEO next week, but they said, we want to prepare you to take over as CEO of this company. And it's a great company, great local company, great reputation and niche in the industry. And so, and I loved that company, still do. The So all of that made sense. But what I couldn't shake was this idea that I won't care about on my deathbed what position I held. I will care about, things that are going to drive more value. And I decided, like, I want to be a really great dad. And so I mentioned before some of the broken family. Like, so my dad was not present for most of my adolescent life, and it was honestly it was ugly. And so I was like, I want to be a really great dad, but I'm married at this point with a 6-month-old daughter, and I know that my hierarchy needs to be first God, then spouse, and then kids. And that's not a normal thing to talk about, of how, your kids aren't a priority over your wife, or your wife is number 2 in your life behind God. There are places in the church where that you see that good pockets, but that's not normal.
Right.
And so I just knew, like, all right, if I want to do that, then what does it take to be a really great dad? Time. It takes time. It doesn't take money and vacations. It takes time to sow into them. So I need time. What's it take to be a really great husband? Time. And then I'm going to stop short of saying be a really great child of God, but to be a child of God and to really lean into that relationship, time. And so I need time, and I love giving money away. I have seen the fruit of that, of being more blessed to give than to receive. And I absolutely love giving money away. And so I could get a job, Phil, kind of similar to your background. Like, I could go get a job in executive leadership and make a lot of money, but they're going to demand a lot of my time. And I could get a job that gives me a lot of time, but I'm not going to get a lot of money, most likely. And so the place, if you want to go have a lot of money and time, then you probably need to go out and work for yourself.
Yeah.
And so that was the premise that led me down this path. And it was, and God just has continued to just leave this, like, I feel like for me, and maybe because of my simplicity, he's given me this breadcrumb trail that I've just been following along the way here. And so he got me to a spot of saying, I want to be the number two man in this company for the rest of my life, to being willing to leave, to, continue to take these steps on the way. So it was that decision that I cared more about. I knew that in the big picture, I'm going to care more about how I handle myself as a man rather than the position I held. And that was the catalyst. Well,
That's amazing. I think so. A couple of things. One, I think it's so important to have clarity on your priorities and know. Yeah. So like you said, God, spouse, kids, and I want to come back. I actually want to talk about that, because I try to do this. I try to have the same priority as, God, spouse, kids, and why that is. I want to come back to that. But before we do, just having clarity in aligning those things, and then really understanding where your profession and money fits in and how it supports those things or goes against those things. And your takeaway from that was really money. It's a trade-off of money or time. And then, okay, as a business owner, as a business leader, I can hopefully make money, also control my time more if I do it well, which is a whole different discussion, right? Because you can also be a business owner that you work constantly. So setting it up right is a whole different discussion. But I haven't spent time on the podcast. So just a little bit on God, spouse, kids. Why spouse before kids? Help me understand that.
Okay. So being the product of a divorced family, and then all throughout my life, I have always had friends coming to me for relationship advice. And so naturally you wind up developing wisdom. You give enough bad advice, you start to figure it out, and you start to.
I don't know anything about giving bad advice, Eric. I don't know what you're talking about, but
yeah. So and I've certainly given plenty of that. But so relationships became really important to me. I remember before my wife and I got married. So this is a few months before our wedding. I asked her, I said, "Hey, if I cheated on you, what would you do?" And for her sake, I'm not going to give her the answers. But I said, "If I cheated on you, what would you do? What if I developed a drug habit? What would you do? If I became an alcoholic and I beat you, what would you do? What if I I spent all of our money on gambling? What if I did all those things at once?" And at this point, I had her in tears because, mind you, I am becoming a better person at this point, but I am far from far from even a picture of like being decent at that point. And so she's kind of realistically thinking like I'm alluding to something. And I just told her, I said, if we say yes to this, if we say I do, it is forever. If I'm doing one of those things, you are marrying me for the character that I have and the man who I'm trying to be. And if I go down one of those bad, get in one of those bad ditches, then I need you more than ever. You might have to protect yourself or the kids from me. You might have to freeze the bank accounts or something else, but I'm going to need you more than ever. And so this is a forever partnership and not just a, what's convenient and works well from the normal selfish standard of relationships.
Yeah.
And so I have just had this piece for that. And so and you think about for your children. And so I have 3 kids, so 7, 5, and about to be 2. And the things that I hope for them, like I hope above all else, not that they become a lawyer or a doctor or, really wealthy or anything else like that, or even a big philanthropist. I hope that they know Jesus and that they have a good relationship with Jesus. And I hope that they have a good relationship with their spouse above all the other stuff. Like that's what I want. So when I look at how I parent, I should probably reflect that because the strongest way we teach our kids is by modeling.
Yep.
And so me preaching that to them while I'm, skipping church to go watch football, or while I'm putting the kids first and we're putting our kids' sports above my marriage. Well, I am modeling to them that, you need to do a good job of treating your spouse well, but my spouse isn't important.
Right. Right.
So we've taken a hard stance there.
Yeah. I think it's just, by the way, your comment on, your priority and thinking about your priority based on what you want your kids' priority to be, right? They're the same thing, right? You want their priority to be Jesus, their spouse, and their kids, hopefully, right? Like that's what their hopefully priority be. The other thing is, I just saw this and I forget what book it was, so I apologize. But the time you spend with anyone in your life, right? With your parents, with your kids, right? It's at a peak and then it drops off with your kids. It's at a peak and it drops off, unfortunately, but that's also why embrace the time you have with your kids while they're young. But with your spouse, right? It grows and it just stays there long term. You spend a lot of time with your spouse. So not just prioritizing that relationship for the sake of yourself and your spouse and having a good relationship, but the example to your kids, especially, then if you get into boys and girls, right, that are going to be men and women, do you want men to treat their spouses right? Do you want your daughters to be treated right in the model based on the model that you are? I think like when sometimes our kids push back on things and, we have 5 and we never have conflict in our house. But when we do, Eric, the message is, hey, your mom and I, we're on the same team here. Like, we're on your team, but it's our team first is the message we try to convey. And most of the time I do a good job of that, but I can't say that I always do. So, Eric, I really appreciate you talking us through that. So you kind of went on this journey and your priorities clear. You made this big pivot, right, into this financial career. So tell me more about that pivot and kind of how your company has evolved over time and what you're doing now.
Sure. Okay. So I was in executive leadership in construction. And so we went around the country meeting with other companies and giving them advice. So I understood business owners relatively well. And so my financial advisor practice, and that's a 87% failure rate when you get into that career. So if you're getting calls from your nephew or someone else from the pool who, knows that they think you're wealthy, so they want to reach out to you. Hey, do you want to come in for a meeting? I just refuse to do any of that. I said, Lord, if this is you driving me here, then I'm not going to do this the normal way. I'm going to let you bring the people to me. And so to the people who were training me, they didn't like that because that's not the normal model. We know what works here. And we know if you do this, that at least there's a 13% chance that you're going to succeed. And I just
13.
I'm not open to that. You wouldn't underwrite a real estate deal if there's a 13% chance it would succeed. So I just said, well, if those are the numbers, then I'm throwing that book out the window and I'm just relying completely on God. And just one other side note here, because I feel like it matters. Leaving a career where you have, national recognition, you've got good competency, and they're asking you to let's move you into a CEO role, and to leave that and go into a career which you honestly don't know that much about, you're not the least bit passionate about, and there's this high failure rate. Like I had to get over take that fear that the devil's going to use, and I had to crush that. And so I basically got to this point of saying, if I believe, if I miss God by not just a mile, but missed him by 10 miles, and he's like, and at the end of the day for me, he's like, what are you doing? I offered you CEO of your dream company in your dream career.
Right.
And you at that age, and you turned it down to go into finance with all that evil world of finance. Like, what are you doing? But he's going to say, so like, I'm just thinking, like, if I missed him by that much, and we blow through all of our retirement savings, which we did, we sell our house to finance the business, which we did, and we burn out all of the help that any family would give us, which we did not. And I'm involved with a number of the local homeless shelters, and I love them. And I love their work, but I said, like, even if these homeless shelters will no longer take us in, and not only I, but also my wife and my young daughter die under a bridge due to starvation because of my poor choice here. If we believe what we believe, then at the end of the day, we get to the party early. And God might say, you knucklehead, you missed it, but at least you tried, come on in.
Right.
And there's a whole nother, obviously I'm bringing up the theological components there, but we dispelled the fear. And so we just decided, if we go for it and we miss it, if we believe what we believe, then who cares? So with that, then, yeah. So the company, so it started. So I just really focused.
Well, let me cut you off real quick, because before you get in the company, you had, national recognition, you had the title, you had the potential bigger title. I mean, just all this societal big stuff, right?
Yep.
And worldly, everything you wanted. How, I want to bring in the word identity, and whether you tied your identity to what you did, or did you not do it, which is what allowed you to have the faith, the courage to overcome the fear, right? Did you how did you identify yourself in that role? Or I guess just how did you think about identity at the time?
Yeah. So my first identity crisis was hockey. I was always special. I could not have a small talk conversation with someone that didn't bring up hockey, because everyone knew I was the guy who moved away for hockey. And so my whole life was hockey. And when that got taken away from me, my senior year of college, that was identity crisis number one. And God really worked on that. Then number two, it was absolutely in that role. And that was my identity. And so leaving that was a strong departure. But I'm going to just go another step with this. And a couple of years ago, God used a different different opportunity to really heal me of my identity issue. And so I'm at a generous giving conference, which is held in homes of people that, get groups together. It's someone I don't know well. They would be a target client from any financial advisor's perspective. He's a wonderful man, a wonderful family in our church. And so I get invited to this conference here, and the gist of it is, at the end, like, I'm past trying to impress people on the surface, but now I'm trying to not impress people in a way that is impressive. That's the stage that I was at here. So, like, I wouldn't tell people where I gave or volunteered, but I'd want them to find out and then think to themselves of how great I am. Like, so I was in that phase, and God basically, the really short story is he showed me through a picture of a cross section of a tree trunk. And so all of the rings in there, he showed me, he told me that I'm the vine, you're the branches. And I'm like, okay, what's this? And he's spoken to me through tree analogies a number of times before. I'm like, wait, but this is a tree. And it felt like he was like, no, get out of that. The earth is the vine. You're the tree. It's like a branch. Just stay with me here. And so what he showed me is like, okay, the earth gets its the tree gets its nutrients up its core to go and feed the rest of the tree. And he showed me that I was this tree, because in this tree, this picture that they had in their entryway, that has the tree had a split, and it was just, maybe a third of the way through the tree, and you could see the split in that trunk. And he showed me that it was like I had a split that went through the core. And so I was leaking all of that he was trying to give me because I was trying to impress other people with my identity. And until I'd made my identity solely in him and nothing else, I would always be leaking what he was trying to give me. And so in that moment there, he healed me of that identity issue that I had, the next iteration of that.
Yeah. And I just wondered if it would go in that direction. And I didn't know if you had that clarity when you left the company. You didn't yet. It took some time after that. So you had a couple of identity crises. And I think it's like, if our identity is tied too much to, how far do you take this? But any worldly things, it can be taken away from you, and you can have an identity crisis because of it. So there's just one thing, and it's your faith that you can't have an identity crisis. You will not have that crisis around it. But that's easy to say, not easy to do all the time, for sure, right? But right. I just suspected that might be the case given your career. So now you've left your construction executive role there to start the finance business. Yep. So tell me more about that.
All right. Yeah. So just jumping through that then. So it was focused on business owners, but doing somewhat normal financial planning. And we knew it had to evolve, and it never felt like it was going to be the normal process. And so much more focused on lean into what really matters. And where that has evolved today is now we service ultra high net worth clients, and we certainly take care of the financial matters. We get estate plans fixed, we get their insurance fixed, we get their investments structured properly. And I was telling you this, Phil, but I'm not one who believes that and the only way to invest is in the stock market. I think honestly, I'd lean more toward the opposite way. And I'm a financial advisor who can get paid.
I paid you to say that, right, Eric? Yeah. I'm just kidding.
It's so true. When you look at what real investing is compared to, I view the stock market more as it's more calculated gambles than it is. You're not doing the underwriting like someone is in a real estate deal or even in private equity investment. So no, I actually believe in real investing, not stock market, so we do all of those things. But when we get into estate planning, like we want to dig into, what are you really trying to accomplish? If you got 3 kids, you just divide up your estate a third. Like, we're talking about some pretty wealthy people here. Well, what does that actually do for your children then? If you were to give them enough money that they don't have to get out of bed, and as long as their investments make a 5% return, that they can make a phenomenal salary. What are you actually accomplishing there? And so we want to really think through, what are you after on the estate planning, from an investment standpoint? Like, do you know what you're invested in? Do you understand what even for the stock market, do you understand what the companies are actually doing? So we have all of these things that are a little bit of a departure from normal finance. And it's not just the boilerplate lawyer. Okay, I need to trust. Okay, sign here. But then where we have found the biggest impact is really focusing in on people through what we've started as family summits. And so where we bring families in and we get deep into the weeds, we bring a Christian counselor in and we go after wounds, because with the wealthy people, there's often wounds, and everyone has wounds, but wealthy people they're not,
they're human.
Yeah. They're not above that. Oftentimes there's some pretty strong wounds from the wealth creation that happened. And then like we talked about, the amount of time that people pour into their work instead of their children. And so there's wounds there. There's wounds in these relationships. We want to go after those and start to heal those, to heal the dynamics of marriages and heal the dynamics of children. And so what happens here is when I get to know every intimate detail of a person's financial life, I get to understand where they're at spiritually and relationally, then they wind up basically granting me permission to speak to them in a way that no one else in their life can. Their pastor, they're like, no one else has the right to say to them some of the things that I can say, because they've just let me in so much. And when they trust me with their wallet, then they start to trust me with their heart. There's a pretty tight string between your wallet and your heart. And so where our practice has gone is into really trying to focus on spiritual health, emotional health, relational health, and physical health. And there's a financial overlay over all those topics. Finances weave their way through all of them. So I'm not stepping too far out of my lane. But the reality is, I think most of us have just assumed that financial planners or financial advisors, this is your lane. You do stock, maybe insurance. The weird ones might dip their toe into real estate. And outside of that, stay out of my life there. And we've just found that there's such an opportunity to do that differently.
Man. Okay. Too much here to try to unpack, because it's so good. So first, I think you're just through all the different discussions you're having with your clients, you're in such a unique perspective to learn so much about them, but also human behavior. And if you go to spiritual, emotional, relational, and physical health, you learn so much about what's not working for people and what's working for people. That's one.
Yeah.
The family summit, I think, is fantastic. And I think if people aren't, are you familiar with David York, who wrote the book Untrusted? So he was at a conference a couple of weeks ago, but he just asked questions. He like talked a little bit about just different estate planning or legacy planning things. And he's like, would you rather have a 12% guaranteed return for the rest of your life? Or would you rather have, kids that are well connected to each other? Like if your kids have a good relationship with each other, right? He asked these questions, like, obviously your answer would be not about the money. It'd be about those other things. But I think so many people, when they think about estate planning and strategies, they think, okay, a third approach, as you say, and they're not, like, we need to teach our kids, we need to allow our kids, and I think maybe help our kids with opportunity, but we cannot just give them things. What we need to give them is the ability to understand wealth, and not financial wealth. All these different types of wealth, I think, is what's so important.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And so if you say give your kids opportunity, what that means to a lot of people is, I'm going to give my kid the opportunity to go play high level sports. And so I'm going to pay this extra money, drive them to all the practices and travel games, and I'm going to keep doors open for them. My mom did that. And it's hard to imagine doing something what my mom did for me with all this, especially as a, so that is one kind of opportunity. The opportunity that I think is really more important for especially listeners of this podcast who are likely going to fall into the, higher demographic of people in America, you need to focus on opportunity as character building opportunity, because most of our kids today are growing up in a world that is so much easier and more automatic and everything else like that, that when we're talking with wealthy families, if you didn't have to try hard at school because you knew you had plenty of money, if you didn't have to try hard to make the sports team because dad was going to pay for you to be on the team anyway and make sure that you got enough, playing time, if you didn't have to, go through a clunker vehicle that you didn't know if it was going to make it on its way to work, if you didn't have to work, or if you did work, you worked at the country club as a bag boy or something, or at, some dad's friend's company, right? Like those things, you just missed out on so many character building opportunities that the people who created wealth, and who honestly, if you found people who were going to measure up as that's a successful life that I want my kids to model after. Well, if you go find out their stories are going to have plenty of hardship along the way. And it's not like your kids have to, if you're wealthy, you have to go create hardship for your kids, but we need to allow them to build character in other ways. And you might need to partner with the Holy Spirit on that to ask, to get that, what does this child need, which might be different than another child of yours. You got 5 kids. Yeah. They're not all the same. No.
And so this family summit, I want to ask more about that. Tell me more about just what does that look like? Is that a weekend? What are the things you're talking about? Who's all there? Just help me understand that concept a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah. So we are, what that looks like is normally it's about a 3-day event. If you come in the evening, we're going to do opening dinner. We're going to spend all day the next day going deep, and then go through the morning of the following day, and then get them on the road, after lunch. And that's all. That's really all the capacity you have, because there's just so much that you take in.
Yeah.
And so the summits, the longer that you're with the family, the more that they stop caring so much about the finances. Once you've addressed those low hanging fruit, like I talked about, we've got the estate plan figured out, got the insurance, all these issues that they had with, the last advisor had them, with some big whole life plan or something else that didn't fit them, or whatever it might be. And you fix their issues there, and you clean up their cash flow and other things like that, get their entity structure correct. Once you're off of those things, you're basically, what we're trying to do is then free up our clients' mental space to allow them to focus on what really matters. So at the summit that I'm planning right now, we've established goals for the family. And so one of the family's goals is they want to all have the God, spouse, kids priority level, and they're working on spiritual goals. And so what we said is, for this goal here, a year from now, we want all of the adult members of the family to put their spouse above their children. This is a big deal. And so we're bringing a counselor in who's going to spend the first morning, 4 hours of the morning, just talking about digging into relationships there, and talking about how to put the biblical understanding for that, and then how to, literally put your spouse above your children. And so we're going to do that. And then we're actually spending time on the physical health, and we're going to go after kind of a nutritional overhaul for them. And so they thought they were coming to me for finance, but it's expanded beyond that. And so long as I'm taking care of the financial piece for them, what they need, then it allows them to not focus there. And then we can bring in specialty speakers who have expertises in these areas that are really important to them. But we have summits are normally characterized by lots of Kleenexes, because we get deep, we uncover issues, miscommunications and wounds, and we uncover things that have been plaguing people for a long time. And we just try to ask deep, intimate questions that families don't normally have those conversations without someone facilitating it. And so that's the thing there, is we become a facilitator to really important conversations.
Man, that's great. And I got my head spinning on just the different things and the outcomes of that. And and also I'm like, huge. Oh man, when's the next one? How do I get there? Like, I got to figure this out. We got to get the family straightened out here. We got chaos. We got kids running everywhere, Eric. So we need your help. I do want to spend a minute. So financial, you talked about like real investing. You said, first you have ultra high net worth clients, and you said, and we help them with real investing, which is not just the stock market. And you talked about the stock market a little bit. If you look at the portfolio you recommend, like the mix, if you will, at a high level, or just the super wealthy, how should our listeners think about what are the super wealthy investing in and doing that maybe I'm not doing if I'm just investing in the stock market?
And so here's where I will assure you that neither Phil paid me to do this, or in any way that we got connected here. We didn't meet at a real estate conference. But I would say that 50% of a portfolio should be in the real estate vein. And whether that is active management or passive, whether that's in real estate syndications, or even real estate lending, we use, so depending on the client, it's different there. We've got commercial buildings, residential, multifamily. We've got a handful of different syndications that we're doing. You got vertical developments and horizontal developments. And so we like real estate, and diversity inside the real estate.
Yep.
But then beyond that, you have so hedge funds get a terrible name because of the media, and what people think of them. But the bulk of the wealth amongst wealthy people is managed by hedge funds and of professional, or of big institutional finance, big pension funds and everything else. Like, well, the bulk of it's in hedge funds, and a hedge fund isn't designed to necessarily beat the stock market. A hedge fund is designed to perform a specific purpose, and that purpose could be a wide range of things. And so we have our own hedge fund And that's performed this last year was incredibly well. So I like hedge funds as part of it. I definitely like private equity. I do like the stock market for a piece. The stock market becomes like a holding tank for me while we're looking for other opportunities. And so you can have dry powder sitting in, treasuries while you wait for other opportunities. You can have dry powder sitting in different, places of the public market, but it becomes more of a holding tank. That's where we pull from, first, and for cash flow or for other investments, but that's not where we're targeting our portfolio. So obviously most financial advisors, they want to sell you on how great their portfolio is or how great their stock picking is or anything else like that. We've really commoditized that portion of it. And I believe that private equity, some private lending, and private, those things definitely play in. I like a variety of different, funds. It depends on the need. If you got a client who's very wealthy and doesn't need any cash flow, well, then we're going to choose different types of investments or different time horizons and just on and on like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I like how
think real estate should be, 50% of a portfolio in real estate that's a fantastic start for.
And I think people can think that you kind of said it, but there's so many different ways to diversify within real estate. There's asset classes, multifamily, mobile home park, self-storage, development deals. Just land develop, all kinds of different asset classes. There's probably, 15 different ones within real estate that you can diversify. Private lending, I think, is an opportunity for people if they're not doing it. If you know people that you can have real estate backed investments where you're lending to people. You can make really good fixed returns, high cash flow returns on that. You might not get equity growth from that, but high fixed returns that people aren't familiar with. Private companies. You didn't say crypto. What are you hearing from people about crypto? I'm not trying to pin you down on what do you specifically think, but tell me what you will around crypto.
Well, the interesting is that you and I haven't talked about is our hedge fund is actually in crypto. And so, but it's a different variety inside crypto. So we have a fund that, so we performed at net of all fees, including the performance fee, was 17.72% last year. And we had a 1.4% drawdown for 10 days before we hit our new high. And so we have an incredibly steady returning hedge fund that is inside the crypto industry, in which you think crypto and you think nothing about stability. You think I want to shoot for a 3,000% return,
right?
But I know that I might have to deal with a 95% loss for some prolonged period of time along the way. And so that's what we think of crypto. I do think that with crypto, I think the big thing is regulation. So when you see the big banks coming in, and they all have been dipping their toe in a little bit more. As the institutions come in. So now you have most institutions, most high net worth investors either have crypto or are planning to add, or even if they have it, are planning to add to their crypto portfolio within the next year.
Yeah.
And so crypto is absolutely an incredibly misunderstood asset class. Whether you think of it as currency or not, it has become an asset class. And with Trump and his administration wanting to become more crypto friendly, well, what the crypto industry needs is regulation. Yeah. And right now the regulation has been like, we saw something we didn't like, so now we made up a rule about it and we're attacking you even though you didn't know you were doing anything wrong because the rule didn't exist before we did it. And so we've steered clear from that. Our CIO has over 3 decades in the hedge fund industry. So we are running everything like a normal traditional hedge fund, which is why we, from the asset and risk management side of things. But that's why we created a fund and performance, a strategy that is able to do those type of returns, because the crypto industry is very inefficient. And so we have figured out how to maximize that for the type of return that we're trying to create. Yeah. And I do believe in crypto though. Yes.
One thing that I'll say about crypto too, like people ask like, well, yeah, but it's not real. It's like, well, imagine, I don't know, whenever gold coins started or just any type of coin started, and they, people were used to to trading in furs, and someone gave a coin. It's like, you're going to give me a coin? I'm not like, that's worth nothing to me, right? And then it changed to this piece of paper at some point in time. Like, I'm not taking a piece of paper that's worth absolutely nothing to me. And then, like in the last however many years, you're going to pay for this with plastic. Like, these things take time, but the currency from, we were trading furs, and now it's all digital. Like, all dollars, if you're trading, is all digital already today. So it's just a different form of it. And then, there's the caps and supply demand of crypto and stuff, like, or the caps. I mean, I'm maybe talking Bitcoin a little bit, but the caps on how much can be provided to the market versus the demand growth. So, not advocating for it. Make your own decisions. Educate yourself, or talk to someone that is well educated on it. But it's just really interesting. Like, if you think about the evolution of currency in history, it helps, I think, understand how crypto could be here to stay, and probably is here to stay. It's just what form or fashion it is, and then what, as you said, how do the regulations evolve around crypto too? So,
well, and you think about, and I'm not going to the one world currency yet here on this either, but if you think about the ease, if you do any type of international banking or any international money transfers, it's pretty horrible if you're trying to do anything of size. We have a transaction that has now been, we are nearing 3 months. It's a large transaction to a number of different people, but it's nearing 3 months of banking compliance regulation that you have. We're talking about 10 figures of money that is currently tied up in compliance there. And that's a big deal to a lot of businesses that are waiting on that. And so international transfers are a huge component of this. And there's so many other pieces to that. But yes, I think that cryptocurrency is likely here for a long time.
Yeah. So we talked about a little bit about family and relationships. We talked about financial, talked about spiritual a little bit, just health and emotion. Like, what other things are you bringing in? I mean, what other types of conversations are you finding yourself having? Because I just want to make sure I reiterate, like, Eric has found a skill set, like a profession, a field, if you will. We'll call it finance. But he's leveraging that, and he's finding himself now in profound discussions where he can have a great impact on people in the deepest ways. And I think that's really cool. And I think that's, like, if you think about the purpose for your careers and opportunities and professions, like, how, that's what we're looking for, is how can we have an impact? And what we're really, like, if I asked you, are you passionate about money or these other things? I think you'd say, we use money to have an impact on all these other things. That's where your real passion lies. And if we can find that, I think that's so powerful. So I just encourage our listeners to be thinking about that. And whatever you're doing, right? Are you able to have an impact, and, like, really, that if that passion is calling you, like it was for Eric a long time ago, are you moving in that direction, or are you running away from that? And I just want people to think about that, and just appreciate you, and, give you a ton of credit for making that leap and just following the heart there, because so often we think with only our mind and money, but if we really follow our heart and our passion, it can lead to some pretty amazing things. So with that being said, I guess, what other, we talked about some different items, like, what other discussions are you finding yourself in that might be surprising for, if we're thinking about a traditional financial advisor?
Yeah, well, I think most of the discussions I have don't match that. The one this morning was, we are talking about belief and what is Jesus's definition of belief. And if you go look in Mark chapter 16 or John chapter 14, he gives a little bit different definition of belief than the what the American church has adopted of this cheap version of faith and salvation. So we have a lot of unusual discussions, but the one that my head went to first when you brought that up was actually something that a business coach of mine told me that he used to talk a lot about, which was, don't lie to yourself. And so this comes up quite a bit. And it's the reason when those goals that I talked about, where, this family decided that they were going to do God, Spouse, Kids. Part of that is getting into, let's not just say that we want to do these things, or let's just not just say that we're working hard at them or something else. Like, let's really bring that to the front and center and put it on the table. And so, where are you lying to yourself? And this applies to anyone in any situation here. And a lot of it often is faith. So if you say that you believe in God, that you believe in Jesus, that you believe that you're a Christian, Are you, do you know what that actually means? Have you, how much time are you spending in the word trying to hear from God? If you're saying that you're trying to hear from God, but we ask you how much you're reading your Bible, and the answer, and by the way, I'm not like, there's, if I started preaching in any condemnation, that would be the absolute definition of the pot calling the kettle black. Cause I remember when it was a mega shift for me to think that I would spend 5 minutes a day praying. Like that was out there. So
Yep.
my quiet time now with the Lord, like if I don't get 90 minutes in the morning, I kind of feel robbed. I feel like that wasn't enough. And so I've come a long way.
Yeah.
But I have no condemnation to anyone who's wherever they're at in the journey. But what I do want to do is challenge people to not deceive themselves. And so if you deceive yourself, and this applies to, I'm trying hard to lose weight, but I keep pounding cake. I'm trying to save money, or I'm trying to get out of debt, but I keep going on vacation, whatever it might be. Like we all lie to ourselves about things. And so figuring that out, if you were, because basically what I'm looking at is, if I'm standing before God, like someone can lie to me all they want, and they can trick me and do that. But if I'm standing before God, and God is anywhere close to what I think he is, then I don't think I'm going to be able to lie to him and get away with it.
Right.
And so when I'm standing there with accountability, he's like, okay, did you know my word when I said this, this, and this? And did you do it? And I'm like, well, I tried really hard. Like, hold on. Okay. So last night I played hockey. So I went and spent 3 hours at hockey.
Okay.
You tried really hard, huh? How much time did you spend playing hockey or golf or blah, 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 anything else? And how much time did you give to me? And, to the guys who are, friends of mine who like, well, I work out 2 hours a day, but I'll try to read a, 10-minute devotional every day. Like, well, that's okay. I'm just wanting you to know that God is not number one in your life yet. You are not loving God with all of your heart, mind, soul, and strength. You love fitness with all of your heart, mind, soul, and strength, but I don't think you love God there yet. And so these discussions we're having, the most meaningful ones are that where it's, let me not condemn you, but let me just ask you, if you strip away all of the excuses and all of the adjectives and adverbs, and you just look at the facts.
Yeah.
Are you doing what you say you're doing?
Right. And I'll just add, like I talk about, and I'm writing a book on this topic as we speak. So people will be hearing more and more about this over the coming weeks, our listeners, but it's called The Purpose Matrix, but it's really about aligning to your life to what's most important to you. Right. So if you're saying that's family, or if you're saying that's faith, or whatever that is, then are you applying success principles to all those areas of life? So let's take faith, for example. So the success principles, do you have a purpose for it? Are you educating yourself? Are you associating with others? Are you taking action? And are you being an example and leading others? And if you're saying faith is your top priority, but you're not doing things that you're doing in your profession all the time, then maybe you are lying to yourself, right? Like, are you prioritizing or educating yourself on those? Are you networking with others? If you believe in association networking, you think that's really important to development, are you doing that professionally, but are you doing that in your faith? Are you doing that around family, like the family summit you talked about, right? So I think it's so important to get clear on, first, your priorities, what are they in your life? And then, are you spending the time to grow in the most important areas of your life or not? And that's what we're working on putting together. And how you said that and summarized it was so spot on. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that the thing that has hit me the most is I've taken more time. I've done a really slow read through the Bible this past time, and it's just hit me like, I think the American church is in trouble. And again, had we had this conversation prior to this past trip through the Bible, these words wouldn't have been coming out of my mouth. I would have been talking more about family and and giving and other things like that, which I still love. But I think this past time through, I'm realizing that if you're like I was not that long ago and said, well, no, faith's important to me, but it might be like, I can say, yeah, I love God, but I mean, I'm first focused on my marriage and my kids and make sure I do that well. And we're trying to incorporate our faith into it. Like, man, it's kind of like eye opening as I read it slower this time to see like what Jesus is talking about. He's not asking to be one of your priorities. He's basically saying, I'm either everything to you or
Right.
I'm nothing. And so don't let me be number 3 in your life. I'm not okay being number 2. I'm definitely not okay being number 7. Either just walk away and just know that you're making the decision to walk away, or bring me to number 1. And that's not a snap your fingers, like done deal kind of thing. You don't just make that decision in one shot. But
And I think if no matter where you're at right now, look, give yourself some grace. Okay, you are where you
full
are,
of grace.
but make some decisions. Like, first, ask the question: who are you, and who do you want to be, right? And what are your priorities? Get clear on that, and then if who you want to be is more centered on your faith, which I hope it is, then start to really educate yourself, find your networks, take some actions towards that, and move in that direction, right? So you're not saying the same thing in 1, 2, 5 years from now. Like, don't try to, I mean, the more the better, but don't beat yourself up, and give yourself some grace for where you're at, and work on improving and growing in that area too.
Well, yeah. And I don't want this to be like some preaching session on this, because honestly, even in the Bible where he gives the parable, Jesus gives a parable about the 4 soils. Someone who, if I don't think I've ever inspired someone so much to go change their life in an instant like this, but let's say someone just was listening to this and got so fired up and they said, yep, I'm going to go make the Lord the most important thing in my life. Well, they're going to run a risk of being that soil that is shallow in depth. And so the roots don't go down deep and they spring up quick and they get scorched by the sun. It's a process, and it's meant to take time. But so if God is currently number 12 in your life, just know that, like, if you only go to church, you might not know all of this, the unbelievably bold, extreme commands that are in the Bible. And straight from Jesus' mouth, forget Old Testament stuff or anything else. You might not know that. And so just understand that there's a whole lot more to this than what you're hearing at church, and you're going to need to dig in more. Yeah. And just know somewhere in the back there that I'm going to continue this journey, but I know that God's probably needs to continue to migrate up to the top position, and you don't need to be there yet. And you don't need to rush your way there, and you don't need to beat yourself up if you're not. All of those things. I completely agree with you, Phil. Yeah.
And you don't have to apologize, because I love having these deep, authentic, real discussions around truth. So I appreciate it so much, Eric. I want to ask you a question. If you just step back and reflect, right? So you're in the construction industry, you have all the titles and all the identity around that, right? You decide to make this shift. And when you make this shift, I can't imagine you could imagine where you're at today and doing with your business what you're doing now, and the conversation you're having this morning that you're just alluding to. So step back and reflect. How does what you do, how does it make you feel?
So fulfilled. I love the work. I love the meetings. I love the challenges. I love every place that I'm ignorant. And I used to hate that. I hated being ignorant. And now I'm embracing it. And it's forced humility on me in different places, and in humility and in relinquishing control, it's brought such freedom to me. And so now when I get to help other people experience freedom, it's the most rewarding part of my job. And so I was just talking with someone else with the work that I do, and we're talking about how having some people make 9-figure gifts to the kingdom. And I told you, I love giving money away. And I'm involved with a lot of charities. Great charities are doing great kingdom work. And those gifts can lead to millions of souls getting to hear the gospel and come into Christ. But what I love even more than that is just the one-on-one relationships with these families that I work so closely with, and seeing them grow. I love that more than I love the idea of seeing another, big gift go to the kingdom. And it's just probably about a little bit of proximity, because I'm closest to them, and I might see the gift go there, but I'm not engaged with the souls. I love making a difference in someone else's life.
That's awesome. That answer was great. And I love to hear that answer. It's just authentic. It's real. And you can just tell you're living, you love what you're doing, and you're getting so much fulfillment out of it. So just honestly, congratulations on figuring that out, and just, again, following the heart as we talked about. And I'm sure you obviously had some help in figuring that out as well. So,
well, thank you. And I just, this model that we have with some of the stuff we're doing, it's starting to get more attention and get elevated, established, but it was not me at all. This was, from my perspective, all this is an accident that I've accidentally stumbled upon this. Obviously, this is divinely orchestrated by the Holy Spirit throughout all of this. Me starting the hedge fund, which forced me to leave the other position and open up my own RA, and just all of these things have just been. I just follow the little breadcrumb trail and just keep going. And I have no idea the mosaic that the Lord is creating. And right now I'm seeing part of it, but I'm sure that it's much grander than what I can see now. But even just looking at the part I see now, it's incredible. And it's just also humbling because I am so not qualified to do this myself. Like I feel like at times I should just recognize like I'm barely qualified to tie my shoes, and to see what he is doing in me. It's truly humbling and rewarding. Yeah.
Well, you can hear the humility through the entire conversation, Eric, and this is so neat. And while it's the craziness of the plan and the, just all the things that came together, and as you said, all of this happening on accident from your perspective, yet all being very, very well planned and orchestrated. So I love it so much. Eric, how can people find out more about you?
So storehouseassets.com, assets, ASSETS plural. So storehouseassets.com is our website. And you can find out a little bit more about what we do there. What I alluded to before, we serve a small number of clients. So it's not like we're out trying to market to bring in a whole mass of new people. But at the same time, knowing that we serve a small number of clients and we need to do that so we can go as intimate as I've talked about here. I've wanted to make all of the stuff that we do available for free to people. And so that was the reason for starting the podcast. And so the podcast, like you mentioned, Wealth Well Done, it's a play on words there. Well done, good and faithful servant. So Wealth Well Done is our podcast. And I mean, all of the strategies that we're talking about, whether we're talking about using real estate professional status to offset, active income or, my view on estate planning and helping walk people through simple estates. And I think I even read one of them, like the cover letter we have for our trust. We have we have minor children. So if someone listening to this doesn't have a trust put in place and they have assets, I would strongly recommend go listen to that website. Go find the one that we did on estate planning, and listen to that, because I just walk you through all the details of that, including, like I said, reading a cover letter. And you're not going to find a lawyer who normally, is going to encourage cover letters to your children and to the guardians and other things like that on that you would potentially have take care of your children if you were to pass. So, anyways, that's where we put all the free information. If someone wants to reach out to us, you can find me LinkedIn, Facebook. Our website has a page as well. And so, happy to answer questions. I'm here to serve, and awesome, the Lord is my source. He takes care of it. So I'm just here to serve. So if someone's got questions, you reach out through Phil. You can reach out to me directly, and I'm happy to help. Eric,
thanks so much for all that. This has been amazing. Again, just your story and your career, the construction industry, being an executive, but taking the leap of faith, all the financial wisdom you shared with us, the family summit, just that concept. God, spouse, kids, the impact you're having, the giving you're doing, all those things are just amazing. It's great to hear. We'll definitely encourage our listeners to check out. We'll put the website and contact information in the show notes. Eric, thanks so much for coming on. We appreciate it so much.
Hey, Phil, this is a pleasure. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to come on and speak with you.